Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? So interesting news. Let me start off saying my name is Michael Music, and I am reading Think and Grow Rich. And you may be wondering why I am dressed up today. As it turns out, I actually got a job in LA, and I'm over here on the East Coast, and it's a job in sales, so I don't have to necessarily be in the office, and I start today. And funny enough, so like right now I'm going live at 10 a.m. Funny enough, it starts in LA time, so it's like 8 to 5 p.m. But in California time, so in reality over here where I'm from in Philadelphia, it's actually going to start at 11 a.m. So I started this live a little bit earlier. It's 9:45 a.m. here. I wanted to touch up on these two fears for today. We're going to be talking about the fear of loss of love and the fear of old age. So, yeah, I hope it's all right. I started a little early. We're going to deal with it. If you can't make it, there will be a recording on YouTube. You can find me on YouTube. It is Michael Music. Just search that. You'll see a bunch of Think and Grow Rich pop ups, pop up, and yeah, you can find that. So yesterday we talked about the fear of ill health, and we dove deep into really the pandemic that we went through, the COVID pandemic. How this fear, even though it's a ghost, it made the whole entire world literally shut down for a brief period of time. So that's just to show you how serious these fears can be. And we're going to dive into the first fear, which is the fear of loss of love. And it's interesting. Uh, I'll just say right now, this fear is actually the most painful of all of the six basic fears. So it's going to be short. It'll be sweet. It won't be as long as the other ones he went in depth, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it after I read it. So, if you got the deluxe version of Think and Grow Rich, we are on page 347, and I'm going to get started. So, the fear of loss of love. The original source of this inherent fear needs but little description because it obviously grew out of man's polygamous habit of stealing his fellow man's mate and his habit of taking liberties with her wherever he could. Jealousy and other similar forms of dementia praecox grow out of man's inherent fear of the loss of love of someone. This fear is the most painful of all of the six basic fears. It probably plays more havoc with the body and mind than any of the other basic fears, and it often leads to permanent insanity. Okay, so this fear is no joke. Just right off the bat, it is no joke. The fear of loss of love probably dates back to the Stone Age when men stole women by brute force. They continue to steal females, but their technique has changed. Instead of force, they now use persuasion, the promise of pretty clothes, motor cars, and other bait, much more effective than physical force. Man's habits are the same as they were at the dawn of civilization, but he expresses them differently. Careful analysis has shown that women are more susceptible to this fear than men. This fact is easily explained. Women have learned from experience that men are polygamous by nature, that they are not to be trusted in the hands of rivals. Okay. So yeah, this fear dates back, since the beginning of time, is what he's saying. Back then, men used to steal other men's ladies by force, and now we're doing it through finances and promising them this and that. Yeah, no, this fear is no joke. I absolutely have this fear, and I'm definitely hoping to uncover it as we go through the symptoms. So let's start off with the symptoms of the fear of loss of love. The distinguishing symptoms of this fear are: one, jealousy, the habit of being suspicious of friends and loved ones without any reasonable evidence of sufficient grounds. Jealousy is a form of dementia praecox which sometimes becomes violent without the slightest cause. The habit of accusing wife or husband of infidelity without grounds. General suspicion of everyone and absolute faith in no one. Okay, so yeah, measure yourself if you like I guess just ask yourself, do you get jealous in these situations? Next is fault finding. The habit of finding fault with friends, relatives, business associates, and loved ones upon the slightest provocation, provocation or without any cause whatsoever. The habit of finding fault with others. That's interesting. Next is gambling. The habit of gambling, stealing, cheating, and otherwise taking hazardous chances to provide money for loved ones with the belief that love can be bought. The habit of spending beyond one's means or incurring debts to provide gifts for loved ones with the object of making a favorable showing. Insomnia, nervousness, lack of persistence, weakness of will, lack of self control, and lack of self reliance and bad temper are all part of the gambling. So, those are the three symptoms. Um, yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think about the fear of loss of love. I don't know if I'm like what to say about it, but I guess some questions I would ask is, does like an old story pop up for you when you hear about this fear um of like a person that maybe has cheated on you, or maybe someone that you were close with stole your significant other, and yeah, I'm not sure what to do about this fear. So like I guess the first step is identifying it, identifying that this is a fear and that it's just a ghost and that it's not truly reality. Um yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts because I don't know what to say about this fear. I absolutely agree with him. This is definitely the most painful of all the six fears. This can affect your mind and body absolutely. And and yeah, getting left definitely does not feel great. So yeah, that's that. I guess since we do got time, we're gonna move to the fear of old age, and this is now at the bottom of page 348 in Think and Grow Rich. So Napoleon Hill says, in the main, this fear grows out of two sources. First, the thought that old age may bring with it poverty, and secondly, and by far the most common source of origin, from false and cruel teachings of the past, which have been well too mixed with fire and brimstone and other bogies cunningly designed to enslave man through fear. What does that mean? So he really, um, the fear of old age, he says, secondly, false and cruel teachings of the past. What does that mean? So for me, I dive deep into my CCD, right? I went to CCD. It's like the school, like I didn't go to Catholic school, but it was like outside school, if that makes sense, um, for Catholics. And I remember my teacher told me that God is always watching, and that if you sin, if you lie, cheat, or steal, you just got yourself a glorified ticket to hell. They didn't say that, but they said it along those lines. And they would back it up with Bible quotes of, yeah, getting into heaven is as hard as it is to go through the needle of the eye of a camel, something along those lines, right? They basically made it sound impossible to go to heaven when if you sin at all, right? And so this idea, like these false teachings, right? I wanna just say right now, I absolutely believe that is false. I I don't I don't even think sin is doing something bad. Like we all mess up. Every one of us have sinned in that sense. So that's just absolute BS to me. But we've been taught this stuff, and so now we have this fear of growing up and growing older and older and older because now we're soon approaching death, which is going to be another fear that we're going to talk about, I think, tomorrow. But I'm going to keep moving on for now. Just know that a lot of what we've been taught, especially in religion, is just it's just messed up. How is really just to plant the fears, and I will gladly dive deeper into this stuff. But let me keep reading for now, and then I'll share my thoughts at the end. So on page 349, in the basic fear of old age, man has two very sound reasons for his apprehension. One growing out of his distrust of his fellow men who may seize whatever worldly goods he may possess, and the other arising from the terrible pictures of the world beyond, which were planted in his mind through social heredity before he came into full possession of his mind. Okay, so we're talking basically about planting ideas of hell into our minds before, and it's kind of messed up that they do this with religion. They create this like picture in our mind of what can be eternal death afterwards, and they plan it while we're such young kids, right? You notice how a lot of us that went through like Catholic growing up and whatever religion you may be, we were when we did this stuff, they made us do it as little kids, right? And so I didn't quite exactly have a full mind that thought for itself at the time. I was just absorbing everything was going into my subconscious mind. So I took that picture of, you know, what could be life after death, and they weren't making it sound like it was too pretty in that CCD. And I'm not saying they didn't talk about heaven, but I am saying they definitely talked about hell too. And and so it's interesting that the terrible pictures of the world beyond, which were planted in our minds through social heredity before we came into full possession of our minds. Um, yeah. Once I get to the end of this, I'm going to talk about a quote from Outwitting the Devil. And this is some pretty wild stuff that I'm going to say. And I really recommend that you get this book called Outwitting the Devil. So this is Think and Grow Rich, right? I'm just going to take a sidestep from the book for a second. This book dives deep into all the good stuff, right? These 13 principles will elevate you to a state of mind that will attract what you need so that you can have true power and get whatever it is that you truly want in this world, right? It's all the good things that Napoleon Hill talks about. And Napoleon Hill wrote another book. It was called Outwitting the Devil. And he wrote that, I think, before he died. And the family, even after he died, he didn't publish it while he was living. The family wouldn't even publish it until 2011 because this book went against a lot of the religious teachers, right? Like a lot of the religious instructions. And in that book, don't quote me on the quote, but the devil, he basically has a conversation with the devil, right? And the devil says that he uses religious teachers to actually spread his fear, right? Like just fear of the devil. And I just recommend that you read that book yourself, find out for yourself what it is, because that's going against the entire religious army. And we were, this is some things that they don't want us to hear, basically. Anyways, I say that to say that these are fears that were planted in our minds at such a young age, and now we're finally doing a self-analysis to expose these fears because they're not true, they're ghosts. Okay, so the possibility, we're still on page 349, the possibility of ill health, which is more common as people grow older, is also a contributing cause of this common fear of old age. Eroticism also enters into the cause of the fear of old age, as no man cherishes the thought of diminishing sex attraction. The most common cause of fear of old age is associated with the possibility of poverty. Poorhouse is not a pretty word. It throws a chill into the mind of every person who faces the possibility of having to spend his declining years on a poor farm. Another contributing cause of the fear of old age is the possibility of loss of freedom and independence, as old age may bring with it the loss of both physical and economic freedom. Okay, so yeah, um, what are your thoughts on the fear of old age? I know I went on a tangent, but essentially, the fear grows out of two forms. One being that it's like this fear that the older you get, I guess the more labor. Maybe back in the days, like, a lot of the men, they were laborers, right? They were like coal miners and whatnot. So as you got older and older and older, you became a little bit more frail and weaker. And essentially, you couldn't do the same laborious tasks that you could do when you were in like your young 20s and your 30s. However, today we're kind of switching to this form of where everyone's noticing that the people that are like doing the labor and jobs, they're not getting paid nearly as much as the people that are coming up with big ideas and building businesses around them. So I feel like we can cross that fear out simply because just times are changing. And I mean, I'm not sure if like I'm saying this from a one-sided perspective, but essentially, like the older I get, I feel like the more wisdom I acquire and the more smarter I get, especially reading these books. And I feel like worrying less, more and more about not being able to do work is just false simply because I'm actually gaining more wisdom and knowledge to do more work and do more for other people. So I feel like we can cross that off. And additionally, the fear is also associated with diminishing sex attraction. So I guess like, a lot of people can worry about the older they get, they start, getting older and more uglier and less like sexual, whatever. So I guess that's the thought. I don't know what to say about that. I guess I'm gonna leave that to the audience. If you guys got any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it. And um and yeah, and especially just the fear is really associated with poverty. It's kind of like the fear of old age is sort of a piggyback to the fear of poverty. So that's what I'm getting from this book. I'd love to ask you guys, what you learn, what you like about the fear of old age, and what you learn, what you like about the fear of loss of love. Now we're gonna start um, with the symptoms of the fear of old age, and we'll go there. So the symptoms of the fear of old age. The commonest symptoms of this fear are the tendency to slow down and develop an inferiority complex at the age of mental maturity, around the age of 40, falsely believing oneself to be slipping because of age. And Napoleon Hill states that the truth is that man's most useful years mentally and spiritually are those between 40 and 60. Keep that in mind. When you're 40 and 60, that's like your prime time, according to Napoleon Hill, mentally and spiritually. So I can't really talk upon that because I'm only 22 right now. So that's like double my life essentially. So yeah, but like he's saying like a lot of people are thinking like, oh my God, their better days are in the past when they're in between that like time frame of 40 and 60, when really this time frame of their lives is probably the best time frame for them to be in. Now, the habit of speaking apologetically of oneself as being old merely because one has reached the age of 40 or 50, instead of reversing the rule and expressing gratitude for having reached the age of wisdom and understanding. So, when you turn 40 or 50, just keep in mind that you have reached the age of wisdom and understanding. And, you know, practice some gratitude for that and some appreciation that, hey, like this is your most wise years of your life. Now, the habit of killing off initiative, imagination, and self reliance by falsely believing oneself too old to exercise these qualities. The habit, okay, so these are the symptoms of the fear of old age. The habit of killing off initiative, imagination, and self reliance by falsely believing oneself to be too old to exercise these qualities. The habit of the man or woman of 40 dressing with the aim to of trying to appear much younger and affecting mannerisms of youth, thereby inspiring ridicule by both friends and strangers. Cool stuff. So that is the fear of old age. Now, I would absolutely love to move forward, but I'm gonna stop there because I want to save a whole day for the fear of death and really have an interesting conversation about that. And like, who am I to speak on this? But I want to hear what Napoleon Hill has to think, and I want to hear what you guys think because you got to keep in mind this is like a community discussion. Essentially, I'm not an expert on this book. I'm not an expert on what's going to happen in the afterlife or nothing, but I am curious about all this stuff, and I am definitely wanting to find out more. So, I guess let me know in either the comments or write down on a piece of paper one thing you learned and one thing you liked about these two fears. What I would suggest doing is write on a piece of paper, write the fear of loss of love, dot, 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 and then write one thing you learned and one thing you liked below that. And additionally, do the same thing for the fear of old age, right? One thing you learned, one thing you liked below that. Um, what did I learn? What did I like? I learned that, getting older, it's not a negative. Essentially, especially in the day that we're in, we're all like, I mean, working remote essentially from our homes, or like that's the ideal goal. And so I'm not really worried about my labor abilities, like my abilities to do construction work and whatnot, because I'm focusing on my abilities to provide more value through readings, ideas, and whatever I come up with. So essentially, the older I get, the better I can get at providing value in this way. And I don't need all the strength in my prime that I do. So that kind of eliminates the fear of old age. And then additionally, the fear of loss of love, that one, I mean, just to find out that this is a big fear is huge because you don't exactly realize it. It's so hidden in your subconscious mind and it's so painful to like, really address that a lot of people never go through life realizing this. So just realizing the fear of loss of love, I think is key and something to keep in mind, especially moving forward in life. So that's what I learned, what I liked. I love to hear from you guys that. And yeah, so that is Think and Grow Rich. We just uncovered two of the six major fears in this episode, which is pretty cool. Tomorrow, we're going to dive deep into the fear of death. And I want to hear what Napoleon Hill has to say about the fear of death. So stay tuned. That'll be tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's interesting now still doing this. And then furthermore, I just started working. Luckily, this week I start at 11 a.m. each day for work. But if I do have my work schedule changed, I'll keep you guys updated on that and just change the day that I read this. So yeah, that's that for now. I want to thank you guys for watching. Peace out, Facebook. I will see you guys soon enough. And YouTube, until we meet again in time and space, it has been a pleasure. And I'll see you all at the next event.